Tyson Fury's popularity has definitely grown a hell of a lot over the past year, particularly in the build-up to and the aftermath of his fight against Deontay Wilder in December. However, his promoter Frank Warren is going as far as saying that he believes Tyson Fury is now a bigger attraction than Anthony Joshua. Now, what is he basing this claim on? Because BT Sport, to my knowledge, haven't published any pay-per-view figures for Wilder versus Fury. We know that Fury has never made in any fight anywhere near as much money as Anthony Joshua has made in many of his fights. We know that Tyson Fury has never sold out a stadium in the UK as a headline act. So what is Frank Warren basing these claims on? Is he looking at the BT Sport YouTube channel and seeing the numbers they're doing for Tyson Fury interviews and Tyson Fury pre-fight documentaries? Is that what he's basing it on? Who knows? You let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. One thing I do have to say though is it might be a get out clause for Frank Warren if somebody questions him about this, for him to say, well, I'm including the international market as well. And to be perfectly honest and fair, I have to imagine that at this point, potentially Tyson Fury might be a bigger name in the United States than Anthony Joshua is. Joshua is somewhat known among boxing fans in the United States because of his beef with Deontay Wilder. He did appear in the United States on ESPN, etc. over the past few weeks. But is he bigger than Tyson Fury? Tyson Fury's actually fought there and was involved in a fight that had a lot of drama and controversy around it. And you know, controversy sells. So potentially Tyson Fury may actually be a bigger name than Anthony Joshua in the United States right now. But in terms of in the UK, I don't know what you would base a claim like that on, because he's never done numbers anywhere near Anthony Joshua in the UK. So again, let's be very clear about what Frank Warren is claiming here. He's not claiming that Tyson Fury is as big a name as Joshua. He's not claiming that he's as popular. He's claiming that he's more popular. So if that were to be the case, if he's not using the get out clause of, oh, I meant in the United States. If he means in the UK, then that would mean in Tyson Fury's next fight, if it's in the UK, he will be surpassing Anthony Joshua's pay-per-view numbers if he fights on BT Sport pay-per-view. And he'll be surpassing Anthony Joshua's attendance figures and fighting in big stadiums, filling them out and, filling them out with fans. So let's have a look at the kind of numbers Joshua's been doing. You can see there in 2015 that when Klitschko fought Fury, it did just over 500,000 pay-per-view buys on Sky at the time. As I say, Tyson Fury is definitely a lot more popular now than he was when he fought Klitschko, but that's what it did at the time. Just over 500,000 pay-per-view buys. But Joshua's numbers, as you can see, they're pretty crazy. He did 1.5 million against Klitschko. He did just under 900,000 against Takam. Nearly 1.5 million again against Parker. And I haven't found any solid sources for what he did against Povetkin, but the number that I've seen floating around several different places is 1.1 million for Povetkin. And I seem to remember in an Eddie Hearn interview that he insinuated, okay, you can take that or leave it, but he seemed to insinuate that the Joshua Povetkin pay-per-view figures were over 1 million or around the 1 million mark. So let's just say that Joshua against lesser known opponents, and I mean lesser known to the wider British public, okay? Most British people do not know who Carlos Takam or Alexander Povetkin are, and or at least they certainly didn't in the lead up to Joshua fighting them, okay? So what Frank Warren is claiming is Tyson Fury is more popular than Joshua now. So if Tyson Fury was to fight, let's say, a Kubrat Pulev in his next fight in the UK, if what Warren is saying is true, then Fury should be doing 1 million+ pay-per-view buys against Kubrat Pulev. and should be selling out Wembley Stadium or selling out the Principality against someone like a Kubrat Pulev. If Tyson Fury fights a bigger name, someone the British public are familiar with, as Joshua did when he fought Klitschko or Joshua did when he fought Joseph Parker, although Parker wasn't particularly well known by the British fans, but because the media and Sky in particular put extra effort into promoting the fight than they normally would with a routine defense, this was a unification, it was reflected in the pay-per-view figures, nearly 1.5 million buys. So if Tyson Fury was to say, fight Dylan White, then if what Frank Warren is saying is true, Tyson Fury should be doing more than 1.5 million pay-per-view buys. Because again, he's not saying he's as big a draw as Joshua. He's saying he's a bigger draw than Joshua. Dylan White is a pay-per-view fighter himself in the UK. Dylan White is easily as well known as a Joseph Parker, if not more so. So if Fury is a bigger draw than Joshua, he should be doing more than 1.1 million pay-per-view buys against the Dylan White. That's what he should be doing. Now, if he can do it, great. I hope he can do it. I hope that Tyson Fury in his next fight in the UK, if he fights in the UK next, if it's not, Wilder, I hope he does crazy numbers. Because if that is the case, then he can legitimately go to the table against Joshua and say 50-50. And if Joshua refuses and doesn't want to give him 50-50 when Fury has proven that he can do numbers just as good as Joshua, then you can put pressure on Joshua and say, hey, Joshua's ducking 100%. And I'll be right there with you saying Joshua's ducking if Fury can match his numbers and Joshua don't want to fight, presuming that that Fury actually tries to make the fight, So we'll see how it goes. But very bold claim by Frank Warren to say that Fury is now a bigger attraction. We don't have any numbers right now to back it up, at least not in the UK. In the United States, we don't know what Joshua could do for a fight in the United States in terms of pay-per-view buys. Who knows? No idea at the moment. 300,000 for Wilder versus Fury. Those are good numbers. Let's not get it twisted. Let's not try and degrade it. They're good numbers. It's not crazy numbers, but it's good numbers. Eddie Hearn tried to shoot down the 300,000 buys. I think it's just over 300,000 buys from what I've heard for Wilder Fury in the United States. One thing I do have to say is how many of those 300,000 buys were HD, high definition, and how many were standard definition? Because there's a different price for HD versus standard definition on Showtime in the United States. So in order for you to do an accurate calculation of how much money the pay-per-view generated, Wilder Fury, you would have to know how many of those buys were standard definition and how many of those buys were high definition. But with that being said, Showtime apparently claimed that in order to break even, the show would have to they would have to sell 200,000 pay-per-views in order to break even. Anything after that would be profit. So you've basically got 150,000 to, let's say, 170,000, whatever it is, pay-per-view buys that were profitable from Wilder versus Fury. And again, how many were SD, how many were HD, who knows? But those are still good numbers as far as I'm concerned. Eddie Hearn tried to shoot it down and say, Dylan White versus Joseph Parker did more pay-per-views than that. 300,000 is an abysmal number. Well, no, it's not an abysmal number. If you take into consideration the fact that Andre Ward against Kovalev did far less than that. Terence Crawford versus Victor Postol did far less than that. And, many American pay-per-views have done far less than that. And you also have to bear in mind that the pay-per-view price in the United States is over 3 times higher than it is in the UK. So selling 300,000 in the United States is the equivalent to doing 900,000 in the UK. So those are very good numbers. All right. Again, it's not like Joshua Klitschko kind of numbers, or even Joshua Parker, but it's still very good numbers because the United States is a much bigger country than the UK. So there is the potential there to do fantastic pay-per-view figures. But in terms of the cost of a show, this is speculation here, but I have to imagine that the cost of a show in the United States may be more expensive than the cost of a show in the UK, simply because America's a much bigger country, and you're going to have to do a lot more promotion nationwide. You see, UK is a relatively small country geographically and far smaller in population than the United States. So when you're promoting, are you going to have to put as much work in? Potentially not. So that's one thing you do have to bear in mind, because I don't know where the break-even point is for Sky shows, Sky pay-per-views, but I was quite surprised when they said that the break-even for Wilder Fury was 200,000 pay-per-view buys. So that show was very, very expensive. And because neither fighter, neither Wilder nor Fury, were household names in the United States, I think that's why they pushed so hard when it came to the promotion. I mean, they had all these heavyweight legends turn up at the fight. They had Mayweather there. They had the pre-fight press conference where they had Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis and Holyfield and all those people on the stage. They put a massive amount of effort and surely spent a hell of a lot of money on promoting Wilder versus Fury. So yeah, it was probably a wise investment, but in terms of the profit that they made off the show, the profit margin probably wasn't as good as it would have been if it was a Mayweather show, for example. I'm not just talking about the overall buys, I'm talking about the profit margin, because they were in a situation where they had to promote two fighters who the American public are not very familiar with. Whereas in the UK, you don't really have that issue with Anthony Joshua. People know who Joshua is. You don't have to go as hard with the promotion. And the UK being a smaller country, if someone is famous in London, they're famous nationwide. Whereas in the United States, it's not necessarily like that. Somebody can be famous in New York and people don't really know them in LA. Vice versa. So those are things you do have to take into account. But let me know what you guys think in the comment section below about Frank Warren's very bold claim that Tyson Fury is now a bigger attraction than Anthony Joshua. What's he basing it on? Is he talking about internationally? Is he talking about domestically? Is he talking about both? Is this just a way of trying to justify this 50-50 demand that Team Fury are coming out with by just claiming Fury's now a bigger attraction, so he deserves 50-50? Is that what this is about? Or is there actually any real basis to this? Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening. I'm out.